my channel. My name is Brittny, and today's video is going to be about my pre-med journey or my med school journey, how I got here to the University of Florida College of Medicine, and everything I did to get here. So if you are new to my channel, thank you for being here. Make sure you subscribe and hit that bell to turn on the notifications so that when I drop another video, you know it first. And without further ado, I'm just going to get right into it. I'll start with middle school because this is going to be like my middle school to medical school journey. So I first decided that I wanted to become a doctor when I was in middle school. That is when my mom went into premature labor with my brother and sister who were twins. She went into labor at about 24, 25 weeks. So they were born very prematurely and were in the NICU, the neonatal intensive care unit, for about 4 months. And during that time, my interactions with the doctors and the nurses and being in the NICU and seeing all the little babies and, you know, really praying and hoping that my brother and sister made it out of there, that exposure inspired me to want to pursue a career as a doctor. I mean, at that point, it was just like a dream. It's like, oh, I'm going to become a doctor. But I had no idea that the journey was going to be not as easy as my declaration of I'm going to be a doctor. It sounded like nice back then, but like I had no idea what I was getting myself into. You know, I went to this public high school called Boston Latin Academy. And while I was in high school, you know, I took a few AP classes. I took like AP Stats, AP Economics, Honors Algebra. And as far as extracurricular activities in high school, I participated in dance in school and outside of school. I was a part of like a dance troupe outside of school. And then I participated in step team and I think like Latin club or something like that. And so not much. I didn't do any volunteering in any hospitals. I didn't shadow any physicians or anything like that. That wasn't even in my frame of thought at that time. I really wasn't that great of a student. I really didn't apply myself. I got in a lot of trouble while I was in high school, which kind of made sense because of the environment that I grew up in. I'm from Dorchester, Massachusetts, and for anyone who's familiar or who isn't familiar with the area, a lot of crime, a lot of poverty, a lot of gang violence. I lost friends to gang violence at a very young age. Just not the best environment to grow up in, but one that I'm very appreciative of because it taught me a lot about resilience, a lot about independence. It made me a fighter and it made me who I am. So, you know, growing up in that environment, I naturally got caught up in some things that I shouldn't have. And that trickled into school. I just really wasn't that interested in it. I always had teachers who would say, Brittny, you have so much potential. Like, all you need to do is focus. Why are you acting out? And I always wondered, like, why do they see so much potential in me, like when I'm doing all of the wrong things? But long story short, throughout high school, I really wasn't the best student. I knew that I wanted to be a doctor, but it really wasn't something that was like really tangible and didn't have a sense of value for getting good grades. I mean, I knew that was expected of me, but I didn't really put a significant emphasis on it. I did get in a lot of trouble with skipping class, and at one point I remember being dropped off to school by Boston police because I just refused to go. And, you know, because of all of my absences and tardies, my school threatened to keep me back a year. And that was like my wake-up call. Like, Brittny, get it together. Get your stuff together and get out of here, because I always knew that I wanted to leave Boston. During my time in high school, I was involved with this nonprofit organization called the Boston Urban Youth Foundation, which was a program for high-risk students in middle school and high school who, you know, were truant, who didn't really apply themselves. And they basically gave us a safe space to express ourselves, to stay out of trouble. And they also took us on a college tour to a few different states: Florida, Georgia, I think Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, just a lot of different universities. And they took us to Barry University in Miami, which I ended up eventually being accepted to and attending. And so that was my first exposure to being in Florida, and I automatically knew that that's where I wanted to go. So I applied and I was accepted. So I ended up graduating with somewhere around like a B minus average. Yeah, that was pretty much my high school years. So I'm from Boston. My entire family, everyone I knew at that point was in Boston. I moved to Miami, 1,000 miles away, no family, no friends, and it's Miami. Of course, like I'm free, I'm like just doing my own thing, and again, I run into trouble academically. I thought, oh, I'm gonna party and I don't really have to study, and that led to me having a very tumultuous transition into college life. I think that I really lacked the maturity and the focus that I needed for such a rigorous career path. And so a lot of the things that I learned was really through trial and error. I didn't have, that support or that guidance that I needed. And I think that my pre-med advisors did the best that they could, but I was pretty lost. And so I had a really rough transition. My first 2 years of college were not the best. I started off as a biology major, and then in the beginning of my sophomore year, I switched over to chemistry. But had I known that I could major in anything, as long as I took the prerequisites for medical school, I probably would have majored in something like African American studies or Spanish, because those were the things that I was and still am interested in. But I didn't really know. I just thought biology, science, like med school, that's it. So that's something that I learned along the way. But, by then I was already too deep into the major that I had chosen. So my university is a very small liberal arts university. We didn't have a pre-med advising committee. We didn't have those resources. So again, everything was like you just figure it out, or somebody who knows what they're talking about. And that made it like very difficult in terms of finding shadowing, in terms of like the timeline for taking your MCAT, for applying to medical school. That information probably was available to the people who knew to seek it out. Eventually, I think it was around the end of my sophomore year, I just knew that I had to, if I really wanted to get into medical school, after doing some research, I realized like I needed to turn things around really quick. So I started to utilize the resources on campus. I got a tutor. I went to office hours. I made sure that I didn't jam-pack my schedule with a bunch of hardcore science prereqs. I made sure that I spread them out evenly, added some fluff in there, and then I started to get involved on campus. And I think this is what helped my application for medical school, is I was highly, highly involved in everything you could think of, like from orientation team to the dance team. I was the captain of the dance team. I was president of the Student Organization Council, president of the Minority Association of Health Students, vice president of Chemistry Club. I modeled, I had my hands in everything. In addition to that, I was very active in community service and volunteering, like on campus as well as off campus. I think in terms of my extracurricular activities, that was the strength and the foundation of my application to medical school, because I had so much experience volunteering at nursing homes, volunteering at the homeless shelter in the community. And even though I still hadn't shadowed a physician at that point, I did volunteer at a few health fairs alongside the University of Miami medical students. That gave me exposure to like medically underserved populations, which I could speak to in my application, but also that fueled my passion for the underserved and for health disparities and, just serving the people who needed the most. So my years at Barry, I would say, were some of my most transformative years. It definitely laid the foundation for the things that are important to me now, like service and humanity and empathy and teamwork and leadership and servant leadership. A lot of that came from my experiences in college. In my senior year of college, I completed an EMT course at Boston University, and I planned on working as an EMT to get more clinical experience and exposure to treating patients in the field. Although I didn't end up working as an EMT, it was still great to learn those skills and how to deal with emergency situations. I graduated in December of 2012, and at that point I still hadn't studying for the MCAT, and I didn't start studying for the MCAT until after I had graduated. I had the opportunity to take a exam crackers course, and this particular exam crackers course they were offering was a private course, but the guy who was leading it, he offered I think like a 50% discount to anyone who served on the executive board of the Minority Association of Pre-Medical Students. So that was like my opportunity, because I knew I couldn't afford like a full price Princeton or Kaplan course. So that allowed me to stay in Miami, pay, you know, X amount of money for this course, which is a really good course, and study for the MCAT. So during that time, I was hired as a lab assistant and a teaching assistant by the physical sciences department at my university. And that afforded me, you know, the ability to pay my bills, to pay for the class, to focus solely on work and studying. And also during that time, I applied for grad school, and I also applied for the Peace Corps, because I've always known that I wanted to do like global health work, and I thought the Peace Corps would be the best way for me to do that. So what happened was I ended up getting accepted to grad school and the Peace Corps at the same time. And I ultimately made the difficult decision to go to grad school at University of South Florida, because I knew that I would have more opportunities to participate in global health work later on in my career. So, you know, I took the MCAT for the first time, and I scored, I think, like a 21, and I was devastated. I was like, what am I gonna do with this? The reason why I decided to go to grad school was because my undergraduate GPA was about a 3.1, so I knew that it wasn't very competitive to get into medical school. And so USF offered a one-year master's program that was specifically geared towards students who wanted to go into professional programs, but either needed to strengthen their science background, their medical science background, or, you know, just needed to work on other areas of their application. So I thought that that was a great opportunity, and to this day I still think that is the best investment that I made in my academic career. So while I was in that program, we took everything from like anything a first and second year medical student would take: pharmacology, genetics, microbiology, neuroscience, anatomy, physiology, pathology, like anything with an ology that has to do with medical science, you name it, we studied that. And it was a very condensed program. It was in 1 year. And so I did really well in that program. I think I ended up with like a 3.7 GPA. You know, also while I was in that program, I had the opportunity to finally shadow 2 different doctors, an ophthalmologist and a family medicine physician. Those experiences were critical, you know, pivotal, critical, whatever, to my understanding of why I really wanted to be a doctor. And so I was happy, even though it took me into grad school to shadow a physician, I was very happy that I had that opportunity to observe 2 different doctors in totally different fields, one male, one female, and they allowed me to be very, very hands-on. And I also at the same time was shadowing in the chemotherapy infusion unit at Moffitt Cancer Center. And so that taught me a lot about like caring for patients in their like some of their most vulnerable times, and like listening to them, because a lot of them just wanted to talk. They just needed someone to talk to. They were there alone, and just to be able to support them in those times was a very humbling and amazing experience. So then I had the opportunity to volunteer with a nonprofit organization called Mana Project International, which they, along with USF, established a clinic in Managua in this community called Cedro Galan. And so I applied because I was like, finally another opportunity to participate in global health work, and I was accepted as a program director. I was due to leave for Nicaragua in August of 2014, so I skipped my grad school graduation, went back home, took the MCAT for the second time, and had a going away party, and like left the next day. And so that was a very very crazy time, and looking back, I probably shouldn't have taken the MCAT during that very stressful time, with like me flying to Boston, taking the MCAT, having a going away party, and then moving out of the country. It was just like way too much going on and on my mind. And so I ended up scoring a 22 on my MCAT for the second time. And I was like, oh my God, I just went through this grad program and my score only goes up 1 point. What is going on? But you know, my experience in Nicaragua was amazing. I worked in a community health clinic. I taught women's fitness and nutrition. I taught English. Like, we had so many different programs that covered like an array of different areas, like economics, health, academics, or, you know, just like all of these ways to personally develop and professionally develop a community of beautiful people. And so I stayed in Nicaragua for 5 months, and that was like one of the most amazing experiences that I have ever been blessed to, you know, participate in, especially like being more intimately involved with global health care and how to manage a clinic and how to treat patients, and then also improve my medical Spanish as well. While I was there, I studied for the MCAT again, and I applied for medical school. And I believe I applied to 15 schools, because that's what I got with the fee waiver, was 15 schools. I got 11 secondaries and no invite. I was like, oh my gosh. Like, I need to reapply. I also needed to retake the MCAT. So while I was there, I was waking up at like 5 o'clock in the morning, studying for a couple of hours before I had to go to work, because I knew I had to retake the MCAT. So once my service commitment was complete with MANA Project International, then I returned back to Boston. I moved back to Boston, and I knew I had to wait another full year to reapply to medical school. So during that time, I was asked to come back to my old middle and elementary school and teach math and science. And that by far is the best thing that I have ever done with my life to date. I went back and showed them, like, if I can do it, then you can do it. I come from the same community that you came from, I come from very similar backgrounds as you, and look at what I'm doing with my life. And that was like the most rewarding experience that I've ever participated in, period. It was very, very impactful to just go back to my community and pay it forward. From there, you know, during that time, I was reapplying to medical school. I applied to, I think, 26 schools this time. I received like 20 secondaries, 3 interviews, and acceptance into University of Florida. That is my journey. There's so much that I learned along the way that I will share with you throughout the videos that I post on my channel and on my Instagram. So if you haven't already, make sure you follow me on Instagram. It's at TheBrittnyWay. Also, make sure you subscribe to my channel and hit the notification bell so that you know when I upload another video. I hope that this video was helpful, and it's been like highly, highly requested. So I am glad that I'm finally getting this to you all, and I hope that you all are having an amazing new year, and I just hope that you all make this your year, claim it, own it, and just boss up. All right, guys, love you. Peace.